Whether it's bad planning, bad luck, bad timing, or bad inventions, well-intentioned bad decisions have plagued history for thousands of years. Welcome to Historic Hindsight. Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom, and today we're experimenting with drugs.
We are experimenting with drugs, Johnny. Everything that we were taught in school not to do, we're gonna do. We're gonna line up some cocaine and some heroin, and we're gonna have it. We're not actually gonna have at it, but we're gonna talk.
Wait.
We're gonna talk about the history of drugs, Johnny.
And, should I not have taken that LSD then yet?
No, you're good. I mean, you can have it. I don't give a fuck. I mean, I'm gonna experiment with my drug of choice, which is beer. So
that seems safer.
Yeah. Which. Well, I don't know. According to America, at one point, it was not the safer alternative than morphine and heroin.
Morphine and heroin? Okay, all right. So we're going all the way back, right, to the beginning of the war on drugs, which apparently started...
Way back when.
Early 1900s? 18?
Early 1900s, although the term war on drugs doesn't really get started in popular culture until Nixon administration. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the whole war on drugs, but we're going to break it up into segments. So this episode's going to be the beginning years up to Nixon.
Okay.
And then maybe next month we'll have another episode, which will take it up a little bit further. But for those of you outside of the United States listening, America decided at one point that we were going to have a war on drugs.
That's
and
right.
We were going to fight our drug usage by arresting everybody.
Yep, and it worked. No
worked.
more drugs in America. It's amazing. Right?
Yeah, we definitely do not have a problem with drugs, except we do, as of today, have the most people incarcerated for nonviolent offenses, which are all pretty much drug offenses, in the entire world combined.
So, I mean, sounds like it was a great success if your end goal is to arrest a lot of people.
Yes,
which
so great, which we did, and which kind of was their head goal. So we'll jump into it. So through the 19th century, all the way through the 1800s, pretty much all the way up until the 1900s, there were absolutely no federal restrictions on any drug in the United States whatsoever.
Now, a lot of that is lack of knowledge and lack of drug availability, and just there didn't need to be, right? But there were still drugs around, right? What did they have early on?
Well, they had opium, they had cocaine, they had heroin, they had morphine, Johnny, and a lot of these drugs were actually intermixed with alcohol and sold as cough syrup or headache medication, or my favorite, your kid's having some tooth pains because they're teething. Put some heroin on it.
Now I've heard of,
not going to complain again.
I've heard of like the whiskey bit, and so that was apparently came after they decided that heroin was bad. They're like, now okay, we'll just use hard alcohol, I guess, to numb my kid's face.
Hard alcohol instead. Yeah.
So I didn't realize how far back heroin went.
So heroin was first, if my research is correct, which give it a take. Morphine was the chemical heroin, and morphine were split from the opium-derived drug around the 1840s is when the stuff started getting split. So through the Civil War, and actually I didn't really know this until doing some more research. Morphine was actually heavily used during the Civil War. Which is odd because when you go to like reenactments and things, most people just talk about like bite down on a stick, but they actually have like, morphine.
Bite down on a stick and take this morphine. Also,
bite down on a stick and take this morphine. Yeah, and that morphine, the soldiers surprisingly got addicted to this shit.
To morphine?
Given.
That's so weird. It's so non-addictive and hasn't caused any sort of problems in the United States more recently.
Yeah, and then, of course, after the war, after you get these soldiers who lost a leg and started taking morphine for their pain and continue to take morphine for their pain, or laudanum, which is another, like, opium derivative, it wasn't hard for them to keep getting it because it literally was over the counter. Like, laudanum was your Tylenol of the day. Just go in, get your opium, get your morphine, get your heroin, get your laudanum, whatever.
So instead of all these
derivative, it's good.
So instead of all these people who became addicted to morphine or essentially heroin, whatever the case may be, instead of them, going and robbing a bank or a store or something else in order to get the money to feed their very expensive addiction, or maybe not expensive, I don't know. But in order to feed their addiction, instead of doing that, they just went into a store and bought it?
Yeah, they just went.
And then I imagine, but then I imagine they went on some pretty crazy heroin-fueled rampages and did a lot of damage to everything, really, all of society.
Yeah, or just were addicted and slept at home. Some fun facts I found out. Sears and Roebuck, yes, Sears, that company that used to be a catalog company that had brick and mortar stores that somehow never adapted to the internet and now don't really exist anymore. I mean,
I remember they were my childhood. It was in the
childhood.
Sears catalog. You could get anything from it.
Yeah, the Sears catalog in 1890 offered a syringe full of cocaine for $1.50. So.
A syringe full of cocaine.
You could get a syringe full of cocaine mailed to your house for $1.50 in 1890.
I know something about drugs, but not a lot. You inject cocaine? Was that a liquid cocaine? I would assume. I would assume it's liquefied cocaine.
Yes, it's liquefied cocaine. I imagine they mix the cocaine with water or something. I'm not a drug.
Yeah, it wouldn't be
person,
water,
so
but that's okay.
You sure? Alcohol? I don't know.
Perhaps,
sure.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm not. That's not who I am. Anyways, another fun fact is Sherlock Holmes. His character was in the original books that were written in the 1890s. Was a rampant heroin addict. So popular culture, like if this was around, like people knew it existed.
Well, I mean,
but it wasn't like.
Yeah, as far as like cocaine goes, if you watch like Amadeus, there's like people sticking their little pinkies in their little sniffer thing, and it was just like it was a posh thing to do. Is what the elites did, probably because it was more expensive than whatever other drugs were available.
I'd imagine so.
And, all through the birth of this nation, we had basically whatever drugs we wanted to treat whatever ailments we had. They didn't treat the ailments, but they were drugs, and so they made you feel better. Because it's like, oh, you got whooping cough, here, have some heroin. It's like, are you better? Well, my whooping cough's still here, but yeah, I feel great.
And doctors, like I said, doctors prescribed morphine for use on babies for teething. They prescribed morphine for pretty much everything. Like, you have whooping cough,
because it wouldn't do anything. Yeah, it just sedated people. Like that's all. It's just made them zombies, and then that's all they wanted to do, and so they didn't care about anything else.
But of course, with everything has to come to an end. We do have to start. People who are, reading their Bibles or doing whatever they do, think that I need to dictate how you should live your life, so they start dictating how we should live our lives, and there begins to have some regulation. So through the late 1800s, there's an influx of the use of recreational substances, so opium, laudanum, morphine, heroin, cocaine. It starts to become used not to necessarily treat that headache, but, man.
For fun.
I feel pretty good on it.
Oh, and I crave it when I'm no longer taking it also. So.
Yeah, there's that. And there's a big thing that happened. Opium mostly comes from Asia, and we're building a railroad, and we need people to work on the railroad, which kills a lot of people, and so there's not a lot of people who are like, yes, I want to go work on the railroad. So we start influxing and importing Chinese population to come over here and work on our railroads, and we paid
them a fair wage and gave them proper accommodations. It wasn't just another form of slavery at all.
No,
it wasn't.
Not at all.
That would be ridiculous. That'd be insane.
So they brought with them larger quantities of opium, which is where opium really starts to get used as a recreational drug of choice. We get our opium dens, which were very, very dangerous. You would go into this opium den, you would get your pipe of opium, you would smoke your pipe of opium, and you would go to sleep.
Yep. But you could be there for hours.
Yeah, you could be hours, days. And that's bad because if you're supposed to be working on the railroad and you're sleeping,
you can't. Well, I mean,
we
can't have you doing that.
So opium becomes really popular in large cities and along the railroad lines, and there's something that we have in the United States that's rampant when you're white, and we see white people doing things that non-white people do. We don't like that, and so when we started seeing white people getting addicted to opium, well, we can't have that.
Well, we're appropriating their culture, so it would be inappropriate in order for white people to do the opium.
It would be inappropriate. So we're going to go ahead and start regulating things, and that's going to be opium. So they decided to do the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, which is the very first thing in the United States that has any kind of regulation on drugs. And it doesn't actually make any of these drugs illegal, but what it does do is say, hey, listen, at least when you're writing on the toothache medicine bottle, you actually have to write what's in that toothache
so
bottle.
this is when we got the ingredients list. This was the
Yeah,
first.
this is where
This
our
is
ingredient
early FDA type stuff then.
Yeah, this is early FDA stuff. So yeah, so this is you can put the alcohol and the opium and the laudanum and the heroin. And all
You just got
got
to tell people what
you
you're
just
doing.
got to tell people that it's in there. So that's the very first thing. But that doesn't do enough to curb the whole Asian people smoking opium and getting white people to smoke it.
No,
so
it turns out people who are going to do a lot of opium don't give a shit what's in it.
Yeah, don't give a shit what's in it. Yeah. So
is there opium in it?
Yeah. There's the Opium Exclusion Act of 1909, which bans the import, possession, and smoking of recreational opium. But notice, I just said opium. It does nothing for the medical practice of
I was going to say recreational opium, too.
Yeah, recreational opium. It does nothing for the medical part of opium or heroin or morphine, which is all kind of derived from the same plant. So, and it also doesn't mention morphine or heroin. It just specifically mentions opium. So,
this sounds like it was a little bit targeted as far as the law goes. I wonder who they could have been going after with this.
I wonder. And it also is just pretty much a tax. You can't have it, you can't import it, you can't use it, but if you're caught, you don't go to jail.
It's a ticket.
You just get a ticket. It's a tax.
It's pot in some states at this current time.
Yes, because if you're
I think in Indiana now it's just a ticket, right? I think didn't they decriminalize? They did. They're going to be last on the train. But yeah, a lot of places you just get a ticket for it and that's it. They just want their money.
Yeah, because if you're from outside of the United States, if you don't know, in the United States, if there's something that we want to ban, but there might be something in the Constitution to prevent that, or there might be some issues at hand getting that law passed. What we do instead is we just make a tax about it, and we tax you as opposed to outright banning it.
Give us that money. We make it a rich person's luxury.
We do. We make it a rich person's luxury. It's odd that the first federal law restricting the use of the drug was smoking opium in the Alien Exclusion Act as opposed to anything else, because, as we said, it seems like it's targeting a very specific group of people, because it was a very specific group of people that were smoking
opium. Yeah.
That as opposed to using heroin, it's almost like they weren't white. And we were cool with the white people doing their thing, but
of course,
super cool with
that's the American way.
With other people doing their thing.
Yeah.
Then we get the big one, Johnny. The first real one that comes up that's more universal across the line, and that's the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914, which taxed the sale, production, distribution of everything that was derived from opium. That was derived from opium and cocoa products. So
basically, everything that the police officers want to know if you have it in your car, this applied to it.
Yes, they're taxing it now. Again,
just taxes. Yeah, just taxes. Just rich people can do it. Yes, now, if you're not, so I get arrested and I'm not able to afford my tax. Now I go to jail, right? If I can't pay my ticket.
Potentially, yes.
Are they taking?
You'll go to anyway. Yeah, you'll go to like the poor man's jail at this point. If you can't pay the tax, you will go to the Like it's the same thing if you can't pay your...
Which would have some type of, I don't know, probably labor to help work off the money that we're not able to afford.
At this time,
perhaps on a railroad somewhere down out west a little bit.
Or breaking up rocks along the side of the road. Yeah, there is that. This law actually comes off the tails of the Spanish-American War in the 1890s because we acquired the Philippines during that war, and the Philippines had lots of opium, lots of heroin, lots of cocaine because, it's one of those Asian countries. And
grows well.
Opium apparently grows really well in that climate.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of soldiers coming back from the Spanish-American War, same thing with the Civil War, getting addicted to, A, the morphine that they're given for treatment anyways,
right,
and B, when you have a soldier who's bored and he's given leave in a town in a foreign country and he goes to the red light district and has sex with those whores and gets introduced to the opiums.
Please, Tommy.
Prostitutes, sorry.
A little bit of
working ladies, they get addicted to the shit and then they come back home and, now they want it at home too.
Guess what?
So we
can't have that. Yeah, still addicted.
We can't have that. Away. But then America got sidetracked after the Harrison Narcotics Act, and we got concerned about the amounts of booze that we were drinking in the United States because Americans, believe it or not, have always liked their booze to a excess. We make fun of the Irish. We make fun of
what's not to like
the Russians about how much that they drink, but the Americans, at this point in time,
Okay, and I'm gonna. I mean, to be fair to everybody during that time, the 1800s, early 1900s, there wasn't shit else to do.
Yep, fair point.
You go down, you go to your little local bar or some dude that's having a campfire, I guess. I don't know, and you sit around and drink.
Yeah, well, and they drank for lunch, they drank for dinner, they drank on the job. Didn't matter operating that heavy machinery. Let's go ahead and drink about it.
OSHA wasn't around then, right?
Yeah, right. The 18th Amendment, like I said, in the Volstead Act, which enforces the 18th Amendment in 1920, helps to create the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. So now we have our first state agency that's designed to go after drugs.
Yeah,
specifically alcohol at this point.
Oh, so so alcohol is included in the whole narcotics, drugs type thing.
Federal Bureau of Narcotics. At this point, during the 18th Amendment, the only thing that's actually illegal to consume and illegal to produce and manufacture and distribute and all that stuff is opium and alcohol. Heroin, morphine, cocaine, they're taxed, but they're not actually illegal. They're just taxed.
Okay.
The booze is where we get the
big problem. Illegal. That's where we draw the line. Now, why would they draw the line at the booze? Was it just like
we are going
purse
to do
clutching
we are going to do an episode on prohibition and why prohibition comes about. But essentially, what you have is a couple of people high up in Congress who decide for whatever reason that beer is bad or alcohol is bad, and then push their agenda through literal violence and threatening and intimidation to get their way to make it illegal.
A lot easier to do back then without video cameras.
Right. And then now there's the whole video cameras that can't do that quite as easily. And
I mean, they still do. They just have to be sneakier.
Not surprisingly, there was a lot of hypocrisy going on during the Prohibition era when you had politicians going, "You can't drink beer," as they're drinking their beer. Now, it doesn't take very long in America before the Volstead Act gets repealed and the 18th Amendment gets repealed. So in 1933, we decided, look, that was bad. That war on alcohol didn't really.
I mean, it was three amendments later, right? That's why there's 21st Amendment liquor stores.
Yeah. But we created the mafia. We created organized crime.
Well done there.
And we gave them avenues to get lots and lots of cash to buy their way out. They exposed all the corruption in the American government, which we didn't want to do.
That was an oversight. They missed that. They didn't think it was going to happen, but it happened. It does.
But it happened.
Things happen this way.
Yeah. So in order to save face, they get rid of prohibition. Now enter Harry J. Anslinger, who is the first commissioner of the FBU, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, the FBN, not the FBU.
Okay.
Not the FBI, the FBN,
okay.
The Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He is the first commissioner, Harry J. Anslinger, who after Prohibition ends decides I'm kind of screwed.
I don't have a job.
Of having, which by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. The FBN is a part of the IRS because again, taxes as opposed to actual
all we care about is money. If you pay us enough money to do things, you can keep doing it.
You can keep doing it.
And then when the prison systems become more profitable than allowing you to sell this stuff illegally, we'll just arrest people and then make the prison systems profitable. But I'm sure I'm skipping some steps.
No, you're right there. So Harry J. Anslinger, he's worried about his job. He's worried about his employment. He's worried about his he's got all those people underneath him that he's worried about. Like what's going to happen to these guys?
He's got a family probably to worry about.
Like the vast majority of the thing that we've got that we're worried about is now gone. So there's not a lot of people smoking opium in Chinese opium dens anymore. That's probably a little racist. I do apologize for that. I don't know, was it? I mean, it was a Chinese opium den.
I mean, well, okay. It was at the time that's where they came from. They stemmed from that. That's where it's made popular.
So, there's not a lot of opium dens floating around anymore, so we're not really too terribly concerned about opium as itself. So we got to have this other enemy. And at this point in time, there was an influx of immigration coming from the south of the border. We
don't like that.
We got a lot more Mexicans coming in, and they're brown, so you're right, we don't like that.
I mean,
and at
we still don't like that. What do you?
Yeah, we still like that.
At this point in time, I mean, I don't care.
At this point in time, at this point in time, in 1930, we have lots of production of hemp as cannabis for the hemp, for paper products, for clothing products, for rope.
Make awesome necklaces that I used to make all the time.
Awesome necklaces that Johnny used to make.
Super cool. sold them in 7th grade for like $10 a pop. It was amazing.
There you go. And at this point in time, it wasn't, cannabis wasn't particularly used for recreational purposes. It was more of a commercial product for paper. There is a conspiracy theory that Anslinger's approach is more on the paper end, but in reality, what it is he needs to save his job. So he needs a drug to go after to make it legal.
Something to vilify.
He has to find something to vilify. So insert the marijuana with an H.
Devil's lettuce.
The devil's lettuce. So before being known as marijuana in the United States, it was known as Indian cannabis.
Oh,
because
that's not racist.
We associated cannabis and cannabis use with Native Americans because they were the ones who were primarily using it.
Also, weren't they more into peyote though? As far as for their ritual, that's a ritualistic thing, right?
And that's Southwest where you get into peyote. That's the Southwest plain, those tribes. Because peyote's a cactus and
it's more of a hallucinogen too, right?
Yeah.
Wonder where they saw those spirits.
Huh. Anyways, so insert marijuana and the whole cannabis as a commercial crop and Anslinger needing a problem. So we've got increased Mexican population coming into the United States. They are bringing the cannabis with them, the marijuana with them, and they are smoking it, and they are enjoying smoking it.
Oh, can you imagine?
In 1930, and I want to phrase this change. I've got to do this. So I'm going to give you a couple of quotes here. So 1930, Harry Anslinger said, and I quote, "There is probably no more absurd fallacy than the idea that marijuana makes people violent." He argued against going after marijuana in the 1930s, because in the 1930s, some people were like, we should go after marijuana if we're going after alcohol.
But why? It doesn't do shit.
It's fine. It doesn't do shit. Most people who smoke it say, meh, and they walk away from it. The people who do continue to smoke it,
they're not going to fight you, bud.
They're not going to fight you. They're not going to fight you. They're not going to rape your white women. They're not going to do any of that kind of stuff. But see, after Prohibition ended, he needed to spread a fear campaign over marijuana because we now have a lot of Mexicans coming in. They're now smoking it. And so easy target because white people don't like brown people.
Well, I mean, any type of person who doesn't look just like us, they can go ahead and get the hell out of here because they're here to cause crime and nothing else. They're here to rape and pillage our lands, to get back at us for all the raping and pillaging of their lands that we have done for the past 5,000 years.
So I have so he then turns his fear mongering. Well, yeah, whatever. He turns his fear mongering over to the marijuana plants. And my favorite couple of quotes he has is the first one is, "Marijuana is the most violent drug in the history of mankind. You smoke a joint and you're likely to kill your brother. Marijuana is the most violent causing drug in the history of mankind."
Wow.
So he went in 1930.
Bold.
He went from "it is absurd to say it's violent" to 1933. "It is the most violent drug ever."
I mean, that seemed extreme.
This is the better quote, Johnny. "There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the United States, and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz and swing result from marijuana usage. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. And we cannot have that, Johnny. We cannot have that."
I mean, this just goes to show you that the arts have always been shit on in the USA because they're obviously trying to vilify. They're saying it's going to be the blacks, it's going to be the Filipinos, it's going to be the Mexicans, and it's going to be the entertainers, which is just code word for the white people who also smoke pot, because they've already covered the other people that they were trying to vilify. But yeah, basically it was, white women are going and smoking pot at these jazz clubs because jazz clubs are dope, obviously, and so of course they go, and they got mad at that and didn't like it, and so they're like, well, how can I don't know, arrest all these people and put them in jail and ruin their lives for entertaining our women.
And most of that stemmed from Prohibition itself, because before Prohibition, women weren't allowed in bars. They definitely weren't allowed out of the house, because why would we allow them out of the house?
Why do they need to leave the house?
Right? Especially teenage and young women who were supposed to,
be pregnant.
The men were supposed to come to them and court them and impregnate them. The women were supposed to go out and have fun. So when Prohibition hit, and we have all these speakeasies where now men can't legally go, they bring women with them, the flapper girls, to dance and
with the dresses,
the
headbands.
Hot. If my wife, I know she's never going to listen to this, but if you're listening to this, hot. I'll wear that shit.
I'll text her.
Now, so this gives the women their independence, and of course, then those women go off after Prohibition ends, and they're smoking marijuana at the jazz club because that's the new big thing. Like, jazz music, that's the new big thing.
Which so also, by the way, jazz clubs are cool as can be, but jazz gives me anxiety.
Yeah, I can't. I don't understand it, but it's fine. Hey, each their own. Now, Anslinger, he's going after making his fear-mongering campaign, making up bullshit about how it makes you violent. He ran articles in newspapers, cartoons, all that kind of stuff, showing like Mexicans smoking marijuana and then going off and raping white women, or Mexicans
like in
smoking
cartoons,
marijuana.
Right?
And
this is
exactly. Yeah, in cartoons.
So this is your political cartoon is just brown people getting high and raping women, and that
white women, Johnny,
right?
White women,
which is of course the only ones that mattered at that time. In a way, like they mattered in a sense that like white men wanted them and nobody else could have them. But beyond that, they didn't.
And hell, the reason why marijuana today is called marijuana in the United States is because of this fear-mongering campaign. He had to attribute cannabis to Mexicans, so he used the Mexican word for it, marijuana, which used to be spelled with an H. And in fact, the original law that will come out of this was spelled with an H, not with a J.
So was cannabis is what they called it here? Or what did they call it? It was just
Johnny. This is
I know. You said it earlier. I just forgot.
Hold on. This is the real reason why you don't smoke marijuana at home.
I heard it earlier. I just don't remember it.
You don't have mental retention. We called it Indian cannabis.
Indian cannabis. Well, you don't want to know why I didn't remember it, Tommy?
Because it was racist.
Because it was racist, and I'm not a racist person. That's why. I did good to forget it, because I want to leave that behind us.
Before his law gets passed, Congress already knows that everything he's saying is complete and total bullshit.
They don't care, though, right?
On marijuana and cannabis use, and determined like it does not make you violent. It does not make you rape crazed. It does not make you. There's no gateway drug. It doesn't make you do. It doesn't make you do anything. In fact, there are
that's about it.
There are no known ill health effects of it, really, in comparison to like other things like
at that time.
Tobacco.
Now, obviously, there's lung stuff, but this is the time where 4 out of 5 doctors were recommending a brand of cigarettes.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, so they knew it was bullshit. It didn't stop them. So in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act is passed, saving Anslinger's job because now they have another thing to go after.
Again,
just people smoking marijuana.
Just a tax act, right?
It's still a tax. It's still a tax at the point. It isn't strictly illegal.
So they can't be arrested. Taxes for the people buying. It's just I have to pay. It's like the cigarette taxes now, right? Similar to that.
Well, sort of, except...
Or were taxes a different thing back then?
So insert FDR.
Love that guy.
Yeah, good old FDR. I did. In high school, I argued that FDR was our greatest president. Now, the more I've learned about FDR and things that he's done, I'm not entirely sure he shouldn't go down as maybe one of our worst presidents. Because
now is he the one that you wanted on our world's worst person, or is that
who did
Woodrow Wilson?
Woodrow Wilson is what I wanted on the world's worst person. Didn't we have him? I think we had him.
We had
him on the.
He lost to Hitler.
Anyways, he did lose to Hitler, which rightfully so. It was America's Hitler versus Hitler's Hitler
versus the original, the OG. Anyway,
so the first term of the war on drugs actually comes up to attribute it to FDR, but not really, because it's not actually FDR's word. It's the New York Times creating an article that's a buzz line, and then it goes from there. So FDR was in support of something called the Uniform State Narcotic Drug Act of 1934. Okay. So what he wanted to do is he said, hey, this tax isn't working because it doesn't actually make it illegal. I can't actually arrest anybody for this stuff. I can only tax them. So I want you to be able to have the ability to go after and confiscate, destroy, and arrest people for distributing it. And so in 1934 it was made illegal. So the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937 actually does make it so that you can, it's not just a tax.
Now it's illegal. You can be arrested now it's a possession charge.
Now it's a possession charge. And so when FDR came out in support of that, like I said, the New York Times ran an article that says, Roosevelt asked narcotic war aid. So there's your start of the whole war on drugs.
Okay.
Is he's going after narcotics.
So 34 is the official start of the phrase.
Of the sort of, yes. I mean, people attribute it to Nixon because that's really where the media was
ramped up, and that's when the CIA started shipping cocaine to inner cities to arrest more black people. No? Oh.
That's next episode, Johnny.
Spoiler alert. That happens.
Spoiler alert. So we're gonna lead up to the war on drugs, Johnny, the official war on drugs. Like I said, so the first term comes with FDR. Then enter Tricky Dick Nixon. And the official war on drugs begins. Well, Nixon gets credit for starting the war on drugs when he says that heroin was the public enemy number one in 1971. Comes out in news media article, which I'm going to play now.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive. I have asked the Congress to provide the legislative authority and the funds to fuel this kind of an offensive.
But in reality, his administration was actually just continuing the policies over the last 35 years, specifically FDR's, whole Uniform State Narcotic Drug Act, which, by the way, I forgot to mention this, puts mandatory minimums specifically on marijuana possession of 2 to 10 years. So if you get caught with marijuana, it doesn't matter how much.
2 to 10 years?
If you got caught with marijuana after the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act.
And you said it doesn't matter how much. That's like literally, they didn't have like under an ounce or under half, whatever.
You got caught with a half a joint.
That's
mandatory
it. That's
minimum
bang.
2 years.
2 years.
Yep.
And I'm guessing that 2 was reserved for a certain skin tone, and that 10 was reserved for another.
You might be right, Johnny. You might be right. Also, Nixon himself never specifically said war on drugs. He just said heroin was, the United States public enemy number one.
Now, and can I say, I agree. Heroin can get the hell out of here.
Heroin can. And to be fair, he had a reason to say heroin was the public enemy number one, because at this point in time, the Vietnam War is going on. Mm-hmm. And through the Civil War, through the Spanish-American War, through World War I, through World War II, through Korea, through Vietnam, we gave our soldiers morphine.
Yeah, and that's basically
heroin.
When you stop getting morphine from the hospital today, you go to the streets and you get heroin. Because it's the same thing,
and in fact, it was so rampant that in the med kits that they gave you, the soldier, there were syrettes filled with morphine.
So this is not much different than the way methamphetamines were treated during World War with the Germans.
We did it with ours too, and we did it for a long time with the amphetamines.
So same type of deal where they're just like, hey, here's this thing, and it's helpful in this way. Oh, by the way, it's also highly addictive and will probably ruin your life.
And so there were soldiers who were taking these med kits and going, I just shot a fucking kid in the face, and I don't feel good about that.
Yep. Yeah.
And,
I'm going to go ahead and forget about it for however long a morphine or heroin high lasts. And
it was true that, and of course, you're in Vietnam, so it's not like it's hard to find heroin because it's derived from opium, and it's in a place where it grows
tropical,
so well.
Yeah.
Poppy seeds and poppy plants, and you know what? We use poppy for everything. We got the poppy. What is it? The
poppy seed bagels.
Poppy seed bagels. Yeah,
that's the only reason I ever failed drug tests. I had a poppy seed bagel, sir.
So you failed your drug test and tested positive for THC because you ate a poppy seed.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I've never failed a drug test, by the way, because I don't have to take them.
And it was, in fact, because you're self-employed.
My boss doesn't care what I do.
Yeah. It was, in fact, that 15% of the soldiers in Vietnam were actually addicted to heroin or morphine or one of the two. And
15%?
15% of the soldiers in Vietnam were actually addicted to heroin. That's high. Yeah, it is. It is. But here's the catcher. We know Anslinger had to use racism to justify the war on drugs to keep his job, right? Which is what he did. And so there's a conspiracy theory that Nixon is going after heroin for the same reason.
Because he's a racist.
Because he's a racist.
Okay.
And normally I don't give a lot of credit to conspiracy theorists because it takes a lot. Like, if for a conspiracy to exist, everybody has to be in on it. And
the main problem with any conspiracy is the number of people involved that have to make it work and collaborate together. And anybody on the group project knows that's not going to happen.
But the thing is, Nixon is said to have been a controlling, paranoid man that had a list of enemies, and a large part of them were people that, spoke out against him. Say, hippies that spoke out against the war, or black people that didn't vote for him and spoke out against the war, or black people that tended to not like the fact that they were treated as third-class citizens.
What?
And,
why would they not? Why would they not be okay with that? Merely 100 years after they've been freed,
fought back for that. So, I'm going to fast forward a bit to 1994. There is a former aide that worked in the Nixon administration by the name of John Ehrlichman. And he said in an interview in 1994 that, and I quote, the Nixon campaign in 1968, the Nixon White House after that, had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and black people with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could also arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know what we were doing was lying about drugs? Of course we did, but we did it anyways. And
yeah, because they don't care. It wasn't important what the actual thing is, and that's so much of this is what it's all about. Is it's not important. They don't. The government doesn't care about your health, safety, and well-being.
No,
okay, they want money, and they want to
stay in power.
A lot of times stay in power and settle petty little skirmishes or whatever.
So now normally I don't take somebody's direct quote as necessarily gospel, especially if it's talking about somebody else or their previous boss or something like that, because they might be a little bit
Of
slighted.
course, yeah, people are going to be upset about it or, exaggerate or...
Yeah, and again, conspiracy, there's a lot of people that have to participate in it, and it doesn't normally work. But here's the thing. This dude was arrested for participating in a conspiracy at Watergate where he actively participated with Nixon to bug the DNC and try to corrupt all that crap, and got arrested for it, convicted for it, and spent time in jail for it. So he had participated in conspiracies. So number two on this whole damn thing is Nixon actually did in fact have an enemy list that was public knowledge through the whole Watergate scandal, which had hippies and black people listed on it. So, it's not a far-fetched thought to think he fucking created a war on drugs to go after brown people and dirty people like Johnny because they smoke the devil's lettuce.
Well, and to be fair, I feel like, I don't think that it's the hippies. I don't think it's the white hippies that got him mad. But here's the thing. I feel like he associates them with black people because those same hippies are most likely going to be very sympathetic and open to, I don't know, not being fucking racist. And so by his eyes, if you are a white supremacist, racist, whatever, white people who sympathize with the brown people or black people are just as bad as them. Yep. And so that's probably where he's coming from with that.
That's probably, and to give some credence, in fact, to the whole, he was racist, I'm doing this for the whole, during his administration, even up until current times, brown people are arrested and convicted 4-1 to white people for marijuana.
Yeah, 4-1.
4-1! And this has been a consistent stat from the beginning of making marijuana illegal. It's not that brown people smoke it more than white people.
Oh, God, no.
I know way more white people than smoke it. It's just that when a white person if Johnny were to get arrested for
it, no. Here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Out for it. Or it's not even arrested.
I would not be arrested. If I got pulled over,
it would have been like, we're going to dump this out. If it was a brown person, it's going to be
let's go ahead and search the rest of the car. Let's search your background history. Let's see everything else. And we're going to go ahead and take you in because this is slightly more than whatever the minimum amount is. And that's what I was going to say is, as a white person, if I had it in my car and I got pulled over, I would be given a ticket. Worst case scenario.
Now,
I know this because it's happened to a personal friend of mine who had it in his car and then he got caught with it and they're like, all right, well, we'll just, here's a ticket, whatever. He messed up a couple more times, got caught again and ended up getting effed for it. But what are you going to do? He was given plenty of chances that people of color would not have been given.
Yeah. So now I'm going to backpedal just a scotch here because Nixon administration and his White House actually didn't really have any time to create a war on drugs because there's a whole Watergate thing that he had to resign for.
Oh, yeah. What was that about? Did he do something bad?
Yeah, he did something bad.
He did the bad thing? Okay.
He did the bad thing. He did the bad thing where he spied on the. Actually, he did what everybody does nowadays.
He got caught.
But like
and he did it poorly.
A bigger deal back then. Yeah, he got caught. He did it poorly, and he was an idiot and fucking recorded everything.
And
like,
that's why you should punish him.
Yeah,
it's not to punish the act. It's to let people in the future know what they have to avoid doing.
Yeah. So his administration only actually had 3 actions on the war on drugs. And first, he did actually end the federal minimum laws on marijuana possession. So, what his administration did.
He ended the federal minimum?
So, yeah, on marijuana. The federal minimum on marijuana. So that whole, if you got caught with marijuana, you could serve at least 2 years in jail. Or
okay,
10.
the federal minimum sentencing, not a minimum amount of marijuana. Gotcha. Gotcha.
That went away with his administration. It didn't affect the states, and the individual state laws did their own thing. And actually, there were still states.
And that's still the same stuff that's happening.
Minimum laws. Yeah, and it's still the same stuff that's happening. But he did actually end that as from a federal standpoint. Second, he did force every serviceman to take a heroin test before coming back to the United States. And if they failed that test, they could not enter the United States until they passed it. So, but don't worry, he did offer you rehab if you failed it. So
that's nice because heroin, if I know any drugs, pot's the one that sticks in your system the longest.
Yeah, heroin's out.
You can detect up to a month or whatever. Heroin's got to be out in a day, 48 hours. You got to be good.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if people know they have a test and they're testing, you're probably going to need some help if you can't pass that test.
Now, his only combat action during his whole war on drugs things and for his administration was Operation Intercept, which actually happened before he even kicked off the war on drugs.
Okay, was this like a... Anyway, go ahead.
It was a precursor. It happened in I'm going to tell you. It happened in September of 1969, before the war existed, and it was supposed to curb the import of marijuana through the Mexican border. Because, again, it's all brown people's fault that we have marijuana. And nobody grows it in the United States. It didn't naturally grow in the United States at all on its own. It only comes from Mexico.
No, the best shit doesn't come from the Pacific Northwest at all.
In any case. So his plan here was to have an intense crackdown and inspection on all things, vehicles, personnel, everything coming in or out of the United States border across Mexico. Everybody gets searched. Every vehicle gets searched. Now, the problem with this is that he made that the responsibility of all the border states.
Who are like, we don't have the resources for this shit, right? There's no way they have the resources.
There's no way that they have the resources. And if you have one dude at the border stopping every vehicle, it's pretty much going to stop all traffic on the border, right?
Oh, it's going to fuck everything up. Yeah, you can't do that.
So the policy only lasts 20 days before the border states go, we're not doing
Yeah, we have created...
We literally shut down the economy on the border for your stupid bullshit inspection.
15-hour traffic jam because I got to search every one of these damn cars.
So in reality, Nixon really didn't do anything on the war on drugs because he didn't have any time to because,
he was a shithead and got kicked out.
And that's, and as abrupt stop as this is going to be, that's the start of the whole war on drugs from when drugs were legal to when drugs were illegal to up to Nixon where the term actually gets coined as the war on drugs for him because, going after heroin and brown people for that. There we are. We haven't got yet to things that you've alluded to before, Johnny, about the whole CIA and that kind of stuff. We're going to get there to the next episode when we bring up old Ronald Reagan. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Looking forward to the Reagan years. That's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and join us next week when we do a movie review of Glory.